Africa Enlightenment Center, Religious, Political, and Social Enlightenment.
The Bible does not present a single concept of ideal marriage. And when people talk about biblical marriage today, they're talking about an entirely modern concept that didn't exist anywhere near the Bible. When we look throughout the Bible, we see changing concepts of what marriage should be. Now, there are features that are consistent throughout, and there are other features that change. An example of a consistent feature is the conceptualization of marriage as transactional. This is money changing hands between men in order to purchase and possess the sexual availability and the reproductive capacities of a woman. Now, when we look at the things that change, these are things that are changing because the broader social norms and conventions are changing. And this is an important point. What the Bible considers to be ideal marriage is always socially contingent. It never transcends society. So one thing that changes is polygamy. In the Hebrew Bible, polygamy is normative. It's not the majority of marriages in ancient Israel and Judah and among the Judeans because most people couldn't afford it. But for those with the means, it was perfectly acceptable. And there's not a single verse of the Bible that in any way, shape, or form whatsoever criticizes, condemns, or undermines the practice of polygamy. And we have places like 2 Samuel 12:8, where God is the one who Nathan says gave to David the many wives of his master. And certainly people can overdo it, but the practice itself of polygamy is never questioned and is in fact required by a lot of the legislation. For instance, levirate marriage, a man marrying the childless widow of a deceased brother in order to raise up children in the name of the deceased brother, would cut off the line of the surviving brother if he were not allowed to have more than one wife. So polygamy is presupposed and normative from beginning to end in the Hebrew Bible. It is not in the New Testament, and that is because the Greco-Roman world rejected polygamy, and so early Christians and many Greco-Roman period Jewish folks did the same. And we don't really see any direct references to polygamy in the New Testament, but we do have some references in some Greco-Roman period literature, for instance at Qumran, that condemn it. Another thing that changes is the conceptualization of adultery. Because in the Hebrew Bible, it was not considered adultery for a married man to go patronize a sex worker or to have sex with a woman who was neither engaged nor married. It was only adultery if he engaged in intercourse with a married woman. Now, for a woman, it was adultery no matter what, if she were already married. Why? Because she is the sexual property of another man, and that was the main concern. When we get into the New Testament, there is some parity that has been achieved regarding sexual expectations of men and women, and that's primarily the result of broader Greco-Roman social norms and conventions, and primarily those coming from more conservative Greek philosophical movements. And so we actually have a push for celibacy on the part of Paul and on the part of the author of the Gospel of Matthew, for instance, who praises those who make themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven, and suggests that there will be no marrying or giving in marriage in the heavens because everyone will be like the angels of heaven who were understood to be ideally asexual. And so the concept of marriage in the New Testament is not even consistent from author to author and is very different from the concept of marriage in the Hebrew Bible. And none of it is the concept of biblical marriage that is promoted by conservative Christians today, because that is an entirely modern innovation that didn't exist anywhere near the Bible.